Administrating Hearings, Judicial Council, and Human Rights Commission. We will take them in that order. We have about an hour, so we don't have much time on each budget. I would ask the committee members after we adjourn to take a close look at the information you were given and any information that you received orally. And then tomorrow we will make a recommendation on how much cutting we can do for each one of these agencies' budgets. They always like to have me hear me say that is the reason that I throw that out. We'll start with a presentation from our fiscal analyst. Ms. Pratt, welcome to the committee.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Molly Pratt. I'm a fiscal analyst with the Legislative Research Department, and I will be presenting the budget request for the Office of Administrative Hearings. And before I begin, I have received confirmation from the Division of Budget that the governor's recommendation does not change from the agency's request. So beginning on page 1, the mission of the Office of Administrative Hearings is to conduct efficient, fair, and impartial hearings for constituents and other affected parties who conduct the actions of state agencies and other governmental entities. Through administrative law judges, the OAH conducts adjudicative proceedings for a variety of state agencies in accordance with the Kansas Administrative Procedures Act. The 6 agencies that most frequently utilize OAH services make quarterly retainment payments to the OAH. All other agencies make payments based on an hourly service provided by the administration. And there's more detail on this on page 5, but I'll cover that once we get to it. Since the Office of Administrative Hearings receives its funding from agencies that utilize OAH services, expenditures for the agency are categorized as off budget to avoid double counting payments. Moving on to page 2 and 3, you'll find a summary of expenditures broken out by various categories, including a 10-year expenditure history, expenditures by major purpose, and categories. You'll note that all of their expenditures are from the state operations. And page 4 just includes a bit more detail about where the money goes in the state operations. On page 5, you'll find a fund analysis for the Administrative Hearings Office Fund. The budgeted amount for the agency is divided among the 6 state agencies that utilize the OAH's services the most based on a 3-year average of past usage. Those agencies are DCF, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Division of Healthcare Finance, Department of Labor, Department of Health and Environment, and the Kansas Civil Service Board within the Department of Administration. Moving on to page 6, you will find the analysis for fiscal year 2026. The Office of Administrative Hearings was approved a budget of $2.2 million in off-budget expenditures in fiscal year 2026. The agency's revised estimate includes a decrease of about $98,000, all from the Administrative Hearings Office Fund. This is due entirely to the agency budgeting less for employee pay, including pay for both regular and temporary employees. The agency has reclassified one attorney position to now be a legal assistant position. And similarly, the agency is anticipating expending less on employer contributions than originally estimated in fiscal year 2026. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to stand for questions on fiscal year 2026 or move on to fiscal year 2027?
Continue to 27.
Okay. So the analysis for fiscal year 2027 begins on page 7. Item 1 discusses the personnel changes. These are almost exactly the same as the fiscal year 2026 analysis. There's a decrease of about $90,000 from the fiscal year 2026 approved amount because the agency is budgeting less for employee pay. This is primarily due to one attorney position being reclassified as a legal assistant position. Item 2 concerns all other adjustments, which is an increase of $7,500, all from the Administrative Hearings Office Fund, above the previously approved amount. The all other adjustments consist of computer and database upgrades, totaling about $30,500. This would include updating the agency's website and adding technological upgrades to the administrative hearings courtroom. The agency has a goal of modernizing aspects of the claims process to make the procedure more streamlined for agencies and claimants. And the e-file system that the agency uses was custom designed and requires annual maintenance and periodic software programming. The e-file portal, according to the agency, leads to cost savings for the state because agencies save resources by not having to print or copy and mail in forms. In addition, the office is contemplating additional ways to streamline the filing process with the idea that it would eventually also lead to cost savings for other agencies. The second bullet point relates to job-related training and travel, including a decrease of about $11,000 for job-related training and travel. The agency is budgeting less for training and conferences, and that in turn reduces the budget for fares as well as meals and lodging. And finally, the request includes a decrease of about $10,000 for a variety of contractual services. Specifically, the agency is reducing the budget for cellular, commercial, and intergovernmental communication services, and more money will be expended on computer and data services. In addition, the agency reduced the budget for professional and other fees while slightly increasing the budget for membership dues and court reporter fees in an effort to be transparent. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will be happy to stand open for questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Molly. As far as some questions, I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you prefer to let the agency answer those, they're able to hear and then answer here momentarily. When I look at the chart on page 2, fiscal year 2018, their expenditures were just a little over $1 million, $1.1 million. 26, 27, we're at $2.1 million. Not quite double, a 95% increase in 10 years. Do you have any understanding or knowledge that you could give to the committee as to why their expenditures have nearly doubled in 10 years?
Mr. Chairman, I can provide a general answer that in, I want to say fiscal year 2022 or 2023, but I will clarify that if the agency doesn't in their testimony. The administrative law judges received a pay increase to be on par with district judges. So that's one reason why you see a large jump in the expenditures on the 10-year history.
I appreciate that. That's, as you said, one reason. But you can see it's a steady increase. And then turning the page to page 3, capital outlay in 24 was $605, and then it's $23,000 in 27. Any idea as to what they did, why their capital outlay expenditures increased so significantly? We don't have history prior to 24, so I don't know what it was. But.
Mr. Chairman, I believe this has to do with the e-filing portal system and the upgrades that go into that process.
Okay. And again, if the agency wants to add. Now, I notice on page 5, there it mentions that the quarterly payments include direct, I'm in the middle of the second paragraph, direct hearing costs, such as court reporters, interpreters, or translators. So we're allowing individuals who do not speak English to come before the administrative hearings? I guess I thought the official language of the state of Kansas was English.
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to the agency on that question.
I thought you would. And then I see several decreases. I'm not going to ask questions about those because I'm not going to complain ever when I see the word decrease in expenditures. Committee, do you have any questions of Ms. Pratt on Office of Administrative Hearings? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation. Committee, we do have individuals from the Office of Administrative Hearings. We will give them a few minutes to say a few words. You will also notice the 25 annual report is included and a DA 400. A DA 400 for our new member is really valuable in understanding some of the expenditures specifically. And so I'm not sure who we have before us, but are you Mr. Snell?
I am, okay. Senator Peck, thank you.
You're a junior.
I am a junior.
I'm as well, so we got that in common.
We do have that in common, and I'm going to stay that way, hopefully for a long time. I hope he sticks around for a while so he remains senior, and he can also be Mr. Snell, and I'm just Lauren. That's my preference.
But I will give you the time. We don't have a lot, but you can say what you want. We will want answers to the questions, but other than that, you've got a lot of liberty here.
I will try to be pithy with my response, with my presentation today, because I do know there is a short period of time, and of course, I've given this on a number of occasions. I didn't have the pleasure of doing this the last couple of years before this subcommittee, but I've still had to do it in other areas of the building each year. So, real briefly, we do, I could go through the entire detail of what we do as an office. We provide administrative hearings throughout the state for agencies. We currently contract with about 38 different entities to provide services to them on an administrative hearing level. We're actually in the process of working to expand that. We're going to start doing some additional hearings for the Department of Education for school districts and special education settings. And so we continue to look for new ways for us to provide services to local government entities in this particular instance, not just the state, so that we can expand both what we're doing, but also be able to expand just the overall level of service that we're providing to the constituents of the state of Kansas. To that end, we'll be working with, I know that there's the Office of Early Childhood that is going to be starting up in in July of 2026. I have not had a chance to visit with the newly appointed director, but I intend to do that, and we'll continue to work on facilitating those relationships that we've had through other agencies with this new agency as we move forward. To that end, I'm not going to go over my written testimony in full. I will just highlight a couple of things, if I get the right copy, that I did put in there that I thought was important. First of all, as I already mentioned, we are going to be being hearing officers under the special education, which is something new to us. We've done review hearing. We've been review officers, meaning somebody else has done the initial hearing, and then we kind of serve as the appellate version of it. We're actually going to start doing those on the hearing level now. So we'll be hearing the evidence directly from the school districts and the parents and rendering decisions in those particular instances as part of what we do for the Department of Education. We do have 38 different agencies. That was increased when we added the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation this past year, and we're actually looking at a couple of other agencies that want to start using our services on a regular basis. A couple of things that have happened or that may be happening that kind of influence what we do as far as our budget. First of all, this past year we did just launch a redesigned web page for our office. Our previous web page was skeleton at best. It provided very little information to individuals who were utilizing our services, and we wanted to expand that and make sure that we were being able to provide information to individuals, primarily because about 81% in 2025, 81% of the people who utilized our office came in without an attorney. They don't have the benefit of having somebody that's there that can explain the process to them. And so we wanted to be able to be more transparent. And so we started doing that through our website, which just launched in December. It is at oah.ks.gov. I think it's actually referenced in our annual report so that you have that web page if you want to go out and take a look at it and see the changes. And I can show you the old one if you want to. We still have it in existence, at least for a little bit. And so I can show that one as well so you can see the huge contrast between the two. We're very proud of what we accomplished with this new web design, and we look forward to adding to that. We are going to be looking at possibility of expanding our space. We are space constrained right now, meaning that if we had a situation come up where we had to add additional staff, we have absolutely no way of doing it. So we are looking at that possibility, but it isn't going to be anything that's going to happen until possibly fiscal year 27. We are under lease right now through June 30th of 2026 with our current, with the building that we currently occupy. And so we won't be looking at anything before that, but it is something that we are looking forward to exploring because we hope to be in that position. As of right now, our office is currently using all 14 of our FTEs. It's the first time since I've been there that, and I started in 2018, it's the first time since I've been there that we've had all 14 positions filled. And we do, and thankfully, we've got a very good staff, and we all work well together, and hopefully, I know we have a change coming up, but that's just because one of our legal assistants is going to law school here in the near future, so we will have to replace her at least temporarily, but we're excited about the fact that we have had a good staff, and we've had continuity since at least February of 2025. I think that was all I wanted to highlight from that. Now, having heard your questions that you raised, Senator Peck, Chairman Peck, I would acknowledge that, yes, there has been an increase in our budget since 2018. I wasn't the director in 2018. I became acting director in May of 2022. And so I can only really speak as to what has occurred since May of 2022. One of the things that did happen I think it was to take effect in fiscal year 2024, and I worked very closely with at least two of the senators who are here on this particular subcommittee now, as well as members of the House subcommittee as well. We wanted to make sure that our ALJs, we could retain the ALJs that we had. We felt we had terrific ALJs, administrative law judges working for us, and we wanted to be able to retain them and make sure that in the future, if we had to hire new ones, we could hire the best of the best. In order to do that, we needed pay parity. I had administrative law judges who were making $85,000 a year, where other administrative law judges in the state were making in excess of $130,000 a year. And so what we did is we worked very closely with the legislature to get that fixed. We did it over a period of 2 years. It was an infusion of about $280,000 into our budget over that 2-year period. And we now have our salaries set so that they are competitive and represent the work that we do at our office. And as a result, we've been able to, again, retain the folks that we have there, and I think I have a very good complement of administrative law judges that currently work for the Office of Administrative Hearings. So that was the largest part of it. The other part was just, and again, I can't speak to those increases that would have taken effect between 2018 and fiscal year 2022 because I wasn't part of that budget process then, but I know that there was an increase that occurred at that point as well that brought it from basically $1 million up to $1.4 million. And you know, some of that I'm going to attribute to the fact that we had changes we had to make due to COVID. I know everybody tries to blame everything on COVID, and I don't blame everything because you're going to hear in a moment I actually attribute some of our cost savings to COVID as well. But I know that was part of it. We had to make some changes within the office as a result of that to make sure that we could accommodate the changes that were necessary as part of the overall hearing process. To be able to do that, it required some changes in how we funded things. It required some changes as far as bringing in additional technology to be able to do things online and offer our services in a way that we hadn't offered them up to that particular point in time. I will note that if you look at the budget since I've been here, the only major increase that we've had is that salary increase that we had for the administrative law judges. And in fact, this year I'm only asking for $15,000 more than what we asked for last year. I'm trying to keep it as minimal as I possibly can. I do not want to have serious increases, and I don't want to spend any more than what we absolutely have to. I'd like to consider myself, after having done budgets for over 12 years now, to be a pretty good steward of the state's money. And that's what I'm trying to do as well here. And so we try to decrease where we can. There was a decrease that was noted for the fiscal year 26 budget. That was actually as a result, we noticed that there was money that was added somehow in the process of the legislature's approval. There was money added to our budget that we did not want, we did not ask for, and so we gave it back. And I make sure that I do that as much as I possibly can. The other one that rings, I know you had asked about the difference between fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25 when we increased our capital outlay from $600 to $15,000. That was a period where we actually had started we had got all new laptops. We were trying to get our technology up to date, and we actually are up to date now. As a result of that, everybody has, our laptops were outdated. They had been around since 2019, 2020, when we had gotten them in place as a result of COVID. And in 2025, we actually had to get new laptops so that we could stay with and not continue to have the IT problems that we were starting to experience. And so that was part of it, is a new lease program that we had entered into with Dell. And then also the additional software that came along with that. So I could give you a better breakdown. I didn't realize that was coming up. If you want more of a breakdown, I can certainly provide that to you. I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Beneficial. There's a question on page 4 I failed to ask that I had circled last evening. Travel and subsistence, 24 was 14 or 13,500. 26 was 32,000. That's a significant increase.
And that's just to make sure that we were training our folks so that they could handle the things that we were responsible for handling. We had increased the number of judges. I guess
And these are answers you can get back to us later if you don't know off the top of your head.
Off the top of my head, I'll do some checking and seeing. I know that we haven't been using all of that money either. I have it there as an in case. In some instances, and I know that we have not been using it. If you look at some of the actuals versus what was approved, for instance, travel and subsistence, I would assume we probably had budgeted more than $14,202 in fiscal year 2025. I don't know off the top of my head, but what we actually ended up using was less than that. As we got it down to 14,000. I've kept it fairly consistent at around the $30,000 range, and in fact, even have reduced it for this year down below $32,000 to $29,000, recognizing that we have not been using all of that. And part of that also, my folks do a good job. They apply for scholarships. We do a lot through the National Judicial College, which is out of Reno, Nevada. And they do a lot of online courses, and so we haven't had to do nearly the travel that we would have normally had to have done, because we've been able to do things online and do it from the comfort of our offices, as opposed to traveling out to wherever in the country that this course may be offered. And then furthermore, I have encouraged everybody every time they apply for scholarships, that the college does offer scholarships, and we've been benefited by the fact that we've gotten a number of scholarships as part of that process.
Is it required that you have interpreters and translators for non-English speaking individuals?
Well,
Is there some federal or state law or regulation?
we do have, so there are a number of hearings that we do. For instance, we handle the SNAP program. If there is a change with regards to somebody's benefits when it comes to food assistance, we are responsible for hearing those appeals. And I would say that is primarily where we utilize a lot of our translation services, is probably with those particular cases. Without getting into the politics of it, up to this, there had been a number of folks who were coming before us who did not speak English. And unfortunately, for us to be able to provide them, I understand the situation as relates to, yes, English is the official language of the state of Kansas. I get that. But at the same time, we have to be able to communicate with them in some way, shape, or form. And so we try to keep it as minimal as possible. And we don't utilize the services any more than we absolutely have to. Again, I can go back and try to get exact figures on exactly what we spent on those services over the past couple of years, if that's something that would be of interest to the chair. But in order to make sure that we're doing our job, because all of our decisions are reviewed by the district court and ultimately by the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, and so we try to make sure that we get our decisions right. And in order to make sure that we're doing that and giving a fair shake to everybody involved, we have enlisted the assistance of those services to make sure that we can understand what's being offered.
Any additional information you could get for the chair would be beneficial. Next Tuesday, it is my responsibility to report to the full Ways and Means Committee, and these are topics that I will likely bring up. Committee, do you have questions? Senator Klemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking at I think the 38 or so different agencies that you do work for. Yes. You had also mentioned early in your conversation that, excuse me, that you were taking on education and some of their curiosities, or when they approach you for some services. Mm-hmm. Could you explain what that is? And when you bring on a new agency, is there a process for doing that or an approval process that it's done? Because I noticed it's not one of the agencies that's on here. So it'd be maybe an expansion of agencies. And with that expansion of agencies, can I assume from that that you have capacity? Or what would be driving that, taking on, it may just be the right thing to do, but what drives to bring on a new agency?
Okay. So first thing, as relates to that particular area, which is the special education, we're doing that as a result of a request by the Kansas State Department of Education. Whenever, and the service that we're looking at providing is whenever there is a challenge with regards to whether or not a student is receiving, the language is completely escaping me right now because I'm not thinking about it. But they're entitled to a public, a free, why, I can't think of the name of what it's called right now. Wow. They're entitled to an education. And as a result, if you have a child that has special needs, they may have what's called an individualized education plan, an IEP. And if that's not being met, or if it's not being done satisfactorily, then the parent has an opportunity to challenge that with regards to the school district. The Kansas State Department of Education is responsible for providing hearing officers for those cases. They also provide review officers for those cases, which are, they're two separate areas that they pull from. Due to some cases getting to a point where they have exhausted the number of hearing officers that they had available, the Kansas State Department of Education reached out to our office to see, because we do administrative hearings. These are, they're administrative hearings just in that particular area, and we already do the review officer hearings where we review the hearing officer's decisions. They asked if we would be willing to have some of our judges included as part of that group of hearing officers. And then typically what happens, they send a certain number of hearing officers to the parties. The parties get to dwindle it down until they get to one, and that's the individual that gets chosen to be the hearing officer. So that's really what we're doing, is we're adding our name to that pool of individuals to be hearing officers in those particular cases. And as far as capacity, because of it's not going to be extremely widespread. They still have their other pool. It's just in certain cases. At this particular point in time, I don't see it being a situation where it's going to cause us a burden as far as taking on that additional workload. I think that we can handle it at this particular point in time. Now, if the legislature comes up with a lot of situations where we're going to be required to do administrative hearings for state agencies, we may have to rethink that. And at that point, I can pull our names off of it as well.
Sure.
So just as a follow-up to that, can any agency come to you with a request, and is there a process for accepting those requests?
So most of the agencies that we have listed on there, the 38 agencies that I have listed, we either have a current agreement with them, or we've had an agreement with them in the past and we just haven't had to update it for various reasons. If a state agency comes to us and they have a situation and it is handled under the Kansas Administrative Procedures Act, we will take those cases. We're required to. Now, there may be cases that they come to us where it's not under the Kansas Administrative Procedures Act, like some of the education stuff, that we can do because we have the experience and they look to us to be able to provide those services. And we have been able to do that for them to make sure that we're, keeping ourselves pertinent and available to the constituents of the state of Kansas and making sure that we're able to do those things for them. As far as the process, it's typically just coming to me. If we have an agreement in place, then I simply will take what their request and I'll make sure that we get an administrative law judge assigned to that case. If there is not an agreement in place, then typically what we will do is negotiate that agreement, get it put into place, and then work out the details as far as how those cases come to us.
Additional questions, committee? Thank you for being here, Mr. Snell. Appreciate your information. Look forward to a little bit more information for the chair.
And I'm going to try to get that for you. I believe I'm supposed to be back here tomorrow. I think Ms. Pratt indicated that there's going to be something here tomorrow as well. So I plan on being here tomorrow at noon, and I'm going to do my best to try to get that information for you prior to that.
You will not be allowed to speak tomorrow.
No, I understand. I'm going to try to get it to you prior.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
For being here. Committee, we will now move. We still have two agencies to look at this afternoon. the Judicial Council. And I apologize, is that you, Ms. Black? Okay.
Hello again, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I will be presenting the budget request for the Judicial Council. In the audience is the Executive Director, who will be available to clarify questions if the committee wishes. So beginning on page 1, the Judicial Council was created by the 1927 Legislature to study and make recommendations on the legal system. The 10-member council is composed of 1 Supreme Court justice, 1 judge on the Court of Appeals, 2 district judges, 2 legislators, and 4 attorneys. There are 5 full-time staff employed by the agency. The agency regularly identifies general areas of improvement and assigns projects to standing advisory committees. On occasion, the Judicial Council will create ad hoc committees to study specific legal issues, such as defendant competency in municipal court cases. In addition to hosting a variety of committees, the agency provides hundreds of legal forms to the public on its website and authors and distributes publications that cover many legal topics. On page 2, you'll find a snapshot of the budget request. The only item on this page is for fiscal year 2027, which I will cover in more detail later. The agency is requesting the authority to spend funds on hospitality expenditures. Moving on to page 3, you'll find a summary of expenditures for the agency. You'll note in fiscal year, or prior to fiscal year 2024, the agency was not receiving anything from the State General Fund. In that year, the legislature moved the agency from fee funds to be funded by the State General Fund. And I believe this also occurred in conjunction with the judicial branch being being funded more by State General Funds rather than fees. On page 4, you'll find the expenditures by major purpose. Once again, all of the expenditures for this agency are out of the state operations. And page 5 provides you a bit more detail on that. Moving on to the fiscal year 2026 analysis on page 6. The approved budget for the agency includes about $13,000 SGF to provide salary increases for most employees based on the market survey from last year. And this provides the agency a total of about $743,000. Items 2 and 3 concern reappropriations. The agency reappropriated about $28,000 in unspent SGF funds from fiscal year 2025 to 2026 due to a lot of the committees meeting online rather than in person. And that will be kind of a running theme throughout the agency's request. And item 3 just states that the agency chose to lapse the funding that reappropriated from fiscal year 2025 into fiscal year 2026, again, because they cannot accurately predict how many committees will meet in person versus online. Item 4 discusses the all other adjustments. So although the agency's revised estimate is otherwise unchanged from the approved amount in fiscal year 2026, there are changes within individual categories of expenditures. For example, there is a decrease of about $19,000 for salaries and wages. This is due to the retirement of the former executive director. Also, the agency estimate includes an increase in the pay of temporary unclassified employees by $4,000. And this is how the agency budgets for the per diem and subsistence payments to committee members. The Judicial Council specifically is budgeting for 15 additional full committee meetings and 10 additional subcommittee meetings for a total of 70 full committee meetings and 24 subcommittee meetings. However, the agency does not know how many committee meetings will be held virtually, nor how many members will choose to not take their per diem and subsistence payments, which this makes it difficult for the agency to accurately budget for those expenses, which is again why the agency lapsed money in fiscal year 2026. or into fiscal year 2026. And finally, the reduction in salaries and wages is offset entirely by an increase in contractual services and commodities. The adjustment for contractual services is due to website hosting fees and the implementation of an online payment portal. The adjustment for commodities is due to the agency replenishing the supply of custom binders provided to individuals upon purchase of legal publications from the agency. These are binders that you cannot buy just anywhere. They're pretty thick, and the agency only, I believe it's every 5 years that they replace the binders. So once like practitioners need new case books or whatnot, the agency will provide them new binders with all of the materials. And Mr. Chairman, would you like me to move on to fiscal year 2027? Okay. Fiscal year 2027 begins on page 8. Item 1 concerns the salaries and wages adjustments. There is a decrease of about $34,000, all for salaries and wages. And again, this is due to the retirement of the former executive director. Once again, the agency estimate includes an increase in the pay of temporary and unclassified employees due to the agency not knowing how many committee members will choose to receive their per diem assistance payments, and the agency not knowing how many committees will be held virtually. Item 2 concerns the hospitality spending authority item, which I briefly mentioned earlier. The agency requests spending authority for official hospitality in the amount of $5,000 for beverage and lunch expenses. The beverages and food would only be provided for committee and advisory committee meetings that are held in person for more than 3 hours and go beyond the midday. The Judicial Council states that a large percentage of committee members waive their right to statutory compensation, and that the request would not increase the Judicial Council's recommended SGF allocation for fiscal year 2027. Mr. Chairman, I would like to point out that since this falls under other changes, it is currently in, the Hospitality Expenditure Authority is currently in the SBC bill as introduced because the SBC adopted all other changes. So if the committee does not agree with that, they would have to take an affirmative action to not have that in the bill. And item 3 just discusses the all other adjustments item, including about $38,000 in additional spending. Most of the adjustments are due to increases in contractual services. The agency is budgeting more for computer software maintenance and services due to increased costs associated with website hosting fees and the implementation of an online portal. Likewise, the agency is budgeting more for printing and binding due to the agency planning to distribute 4 publications rather than 3. And there is a note that pricing fluctuations at the state printer also contribute to the increase for fiscal year 2027. My understanding is that is still true. There are fluctuations that the agency can't predict from the state printer. However, the agency provided a bit more detail to me, and there are also a lot of customers who will cancel their orders or will choose to order more in addition. So that also contributes to the fluctuation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for questions.
First question, the agency was funded with all funds, fee funds, $600,000, now it's SGF. That fee fund money is now going where?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that there is a little bit of money still remaining in one of the fee funds. I do not believe the agency has expended from it. I can get you more detail on that if the agency doesn't speak to it in their testimony.
I guess I'm thinking that if they were drawing fees, the fund is probably there, the fees are probably still there. So it would be beneficial to have additional information on that. And then I will just mention things, that way the agency's got a little bit of a heads up. Repair and servicing went from $1,100 to $32,000. Travel and subsistence and from 24 to 26 in 2 years doubled. So I would question why that would be. And then you and I will want to get clarification on what you said at the end about the all other adjustments, but we'll worry about that. So do you want to tackle anything as far as the increases in repair and servicing and travel and subsistence? Those, I just try to look at extraordinary increases. I see increases across the board, but I'm picking the extraordinary ones. That's on page 5.
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to the agency. However, for page 5, you'll see this chart on all budget summaries. Sometimes, my understanding is that sometimes the categories aren't necessarily the most aptly named. So I can definitely discuss that with you in more detail later if you would like. But yes, I can also look into why those numbers increase in 26 and 2027 if the agency doesn't speak to it.
Thank you. Committee, do you have questions of Ms. Pratt? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Turn to the agency, and I apologize, Director, on your last name. I'm going to ask you to pronounce that for me because I could pronounce it 2 or 3 different ways, and it's got more than 4 letters like Peck, so it's...
No problem, no problem. My name is Laura Nordgren, and I am the Executive Director of the Judicial Council. I am a new face probably for you if you've been dealing with Nancy Strauss for the last 20 years. She retired this past year. It was sad to lose her, but we're happy for her in her retirement. And I took over in June. And I have been with the agency as a staff attorney for the last 10 years. So I am familiar with most of our workings. Would you like me to give you any more information about the agency itself? I know you all are familiar with us.
If you could be brief about the agency, I would be interested to know because I've asked several legislators about the Judicial Council. They say, who? I don't know what they do.
Yes, I will say if you have not had direct contact with us, most people do not really know who we are, or they assume that we are part of the Office of Judicial Administration. Most attorneys think that, which is not true. We are separate from them completely, right? Have our own budget, have our own staffing, everything like that. We are in the judicial branch, but we are a separate agency completely. So most attorneys and the public would have interactions with us when it comes to our legal forms on our website. We provide over 800 free legal forms for the public to use when they're filing things in the court system, as well as attorneys to look at. And that number is growing steadily. We are partnering with the Office of Judicial Administration, their Access to Justice Committee, to continue that work and to increase that service to Kansans. The other part of what we have 2 other really areas that we work in. One is providing studies specific to legal topics. Those are often requested by legislators. Often they're on a bill that comes before a committee, and there's lots of questions. There's constitutional issues that the conferees bring up, or there's something in the system that they see as a problem, and they ask us to then study that. The council is a 10-member body. They're our governing body, and they look at those requests, and when they approve those, they then assign it to an advisory committee, and those advisory committees are made up of experts and stakeholders from across the state. The other part of what we do is our publications. And I brought a sample. Let me grab it. I forgot to bring it up. If you're not familiar, when people think publications, sometimes they think real small books. These are the binders that Molly mentioned. This is one of our publications. These are mostly for legal practitioners. This particularly is the pattern instructions for Kansas. These instructions are used in all jury trials in the state. We also have publications for a court manual for municipal courts judges to use, and probate forms for legal practitioners to use. We do sell access to all of these. So we bring in approximately $350,000 to $450,000 in a given year, and all of that money goes to SGF. I do believe I'm going to get more information for you about, you said if there's money sitting in a fee fund. Our fiscal officers mentioned that there might be some money that has just been sitting there since we went to SGF. And so that might be something you all need to take out of that fund. I'm not sure.
I like the way you said that, particularly since the chair is here.
I'm not sure, but I can get you those exact numbers.
That would be,
It's just not something that I have here because we don't have, I don't think we have access to it anymore. We don't spend out of it.
any of that information could be gotten to our fiscal analyst, if you would, please.
Okay, okay.
Do you have answers to the questions that I had asked about repair and leasing and travel and subsistence increase over 2 years of one almost tripling and the other doubling?
Yes, yes, I do. So our travel and subsistence budget is because all of our advisory committee members and judicial council members are statutorily entitled to per diem and subsistence for every meeting that they attend. And so we budget for people to take that. And then usually we have a good success rate. We do ask them to waive it when they come on to a committee. And we have about 90, I would say around 90% do waive it so that they're volunteering their time instead of getting paid. And so the actuals that you're seeing are the people that actually take it. So our budget number is always much higher because, so for example, this year, we have a study request that we are starting that requires a whole new ad hoc committee. And that study, so it's all new people that we now need to say, are you willing to waive? And they don't have to. So if they didn't, we just want to be prepared to be able to pay that if they chose not to waive that. So that's the difference in travel and subsistence. The other reason why the number in 2024 is lower and is lower than if you look at like a 10-year analysis of that category is after COVID, we were all much better about doing meetings online, and those are much cheaper for us. We do not pay people's mileage to come to Topeka from across the state. So they travel 6 hours to come to a meeting, right? And so sometimes we do have to pay for a hotel and then mileage for people to travel. So that's what that fluctuation is.
Go ahead.
We do, if we don't use it, we plan to lapse it back to the state.
Thank you. Committee, do you have questions of Director Nordegren? Close enough.
Yeah.
Do not see any. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your answers. Ms. Pratt, we do not have a DA 400 for this agency. Is that something you could get for us?
Mr. Chairman, I will have to discuss that with my bosses. The last agency chose to provide that to the committee. I just need to make sure it's something that we can, that KLRD can distribute. But I can at least get you information from it.
Well, we would appreciate, I think, anything the legislature needs, you can distribute. But go ahead and visit with Mr. Deere. And I will back up, Mr. Snell, I really appreciate the information you provide. Oh, he's gone, so I won't say anything good about him. But he provided this committee with information with Q&A. I'm going to guess frequently asked questions and then provided answers, so that was very beneficial. So we trust that we will receive a DA 400 for the Judicial Council, and we will look further into, the chair's not convinced that the Judicial Council is needed any longer. It started in 1927. And with technology and various things, but that will be discussion for another day. I just want to give you a heads up that that's the thinking of the chair. We will move to the Human Rights Commission and understand.
DA 400 was in the original packet. They mixed them all together. I think it's on the back. And they're stapled together. There's all the DA 400s are together.
Oh, all of them are
I
together.
think so, yes, sir.
Okay, okay, thank you. Committee, if you've not seen this gentleman before, you've missed a lot of session. And so I don't even have a name written down. Somewhere you've got a name, right? And the last name? Adams, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Adams.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, it's good to be before you today as a legislative fellow, now with KLRD. But today I'm also here to present the budget for the Human Rights Commission. In attendance as well is Ruth Glover, the executive director of the agency. As a brief amount of background, the KHRC is the state agency that's responsible for enforcing laws that prohibit discrimination and ensure equal opportunity in employment, housing, and public accommodations. There's additional information on the types of discrimination that they combat on that first page of the document in front of you. Past that, on the same page, you'll see the amount of SGF that they've received in previous years, the amount of all funds that they've received in previous years, as well as the request for 26 and 27. Turning to page 2, you can see a 10-year expenditure history. This is a breakdown of the amount that they've received both as a graph as well as a numerical table. You'll note that under the FTE section, this amount has steadily declined over the years and remains now at 20. Turning to page 3, you can see expenditures by major purpose. I'll note that the agency's 100% of the agency's budget is used for state operations only, and this is maintained for the past, well, at least 3 years, as is demonstrated on the table. The other thing I'll bring of note to you is that under the state operations on page 3, salaries and wages, the amount that's under the fiscal year 2025 and then the approved amounts for 26 and 27 is different based on the agency has not hired as many FTEs as they are statutorily allowed to. So the amount budgeted does not reflect the amount spent. Turning then to page 4, you can see these items broken down even further for state operations specifically. Again, I'll note the difference in the amount of employee pay versus 25 actual and 26 approved. Turning to page 5, you'll see the expenditures by program. I would like to note very quickly that the agency has indicated on this that there are 3 different programs that they maintain. This is actually an error done by previous but it's actually an error in the accounting system. They do not maintain an administration budget category. That's why there's only 2 years where there is funding allocated to this. By this point, these are approved numbers, however, so the agency is unable to remove them, and neither is KLRD for statutory purposes. So even though they only maintain 2 of compliance and public information, administration is also included just as an error effectively. Regardless, most of their actual funding is for maintained in compliance with a small amount dedicated to public information. Turning to page 6, I'm going to cover the agency's federal funding source as well as their federal fund fee fund. To be clear, the agency itself covers discrimination law. Both the state government and the federal government have laws prohibiting discrimination. In some instances, the state government has jurisdiction over a discrimination claim. In other instances, the federal government has jurisdiction over a discrimination claim. If you imagine it like a Venn diagram, there is some overlap in the middle, where both the state government and the federal government have jurisdiction to pursue a case. In instances where the state government and the KHRC handle a case that both has state and federal, they are paid $830 to handle that case. In instances where the KHRC is provided information, but they realize during their investigation that it is outside of state jurisdiction, but is within federal jurisdiction, and they transfer that information to the federal side, they are paid $125 per case for this information. Included on page 6 is a breakdown of that information I've just provided to you, as well as a breakdown of their federal fund. I'll note that under this federal fund, the beginning balance does trend downwards. The agency has indicated that this is because of a necessity to hire an additional special investigator to help resolve caseloads. But the ending balance does trend downwards, as you can see both at the beginning balance at the top and at the bottom in purple, the ending balance. The agency has also indicated that this federal fund is how they use to pay their employees, and that if they do hire a special investigator moving forward, they plan to use this federal fund as the primary source for the funding of that employee. Turning now to page 7, we begin on the fiscal year 2026 analysis. I'm going to go by line item. Under number 1, this is the approved amount from 2025, which is about $1,803,769 with 20 FTEs. The agency's the second line item is the reappropriations amount, which was $680. A 1.5% lapse was required last year, which reduces that to $670. I will note that there is a global motion to remove reappropriations, and at this time, that remains in effect. So the agency is without that $670 reappropriation amount currently. Finally, the agency's actual request under number 4 is the same amount for SGF as was approved in 2025, but a reduction in their federal amount by $74,000 and a slight reduction within their education and training funding, which is $1,350, but is again outside of SGF funding. It's within the fee fund within the agency. Ultimately, they're asking to decrease their budget by $75,360, all from fee funds within the agency and not SGF spending. Under section 4, the actual description of the federal investigator, or sorry, excuse me, not federal, the investigator that they're planning to hire is detailed more directly under the agency's adjustment section. There's also an indication of the agency's Tetrising of their budget to ensure that they meet and maintain the amounts that are approved by the legislature. These include things like increases for commodities, office supplies, and processing supplies, but reductions for communications, printing, travel, and supply costs. At this time, Mr. Chair, I'm willing to accept questions, or I can move on to 2027.
Move on to 27, please.
Moving to 27, the agency's proposed budget for 27 includes a slight increase of the SGF from the 1.2 million approved to 9,600, or sorry, by an increase of 9,644, as well as an increase of their federal funding from their own fee fund to 992, a slight decrease for their training fund. This ultimately totals an increase of $10,000 and $17 for all funds for the agency. This is from two things. One, $9,904 increase from that $9,000 increase from SGF is the cost of indices for group health insurance rates increasing, as well as the agency's employer contribution rates for health insurance are expected to rise by 7.77%. The agency also included a reduction of $260 for the SGF from a CAPERS change, and that's also factored into that budget that's presented to you. With that, I am finished. However, I do have two comments to address. I do have the address of the location for where they're located. They're at 900 Southwest Jackson Street in Topeka, Kansas, or the Land and State Capitol Building, which had been asked previously, so I just thought I would bring that to you now. But that, I'm willing to answer any questions the committee might have.
I'm also going to request a DA 400 on this agency because I don't have it. I've been told some of my other committee members may have it, but I do not. So I would like a DA 400. And committee, this is one of those interesting agencies. The chair likes to look with a critical eye at every budget, every agency, and I couldn't find anything to criticize here. I apologize for that. No, I'm just kidding. But I will note to the committee that the FTEs are 3 lower than they were 10 years ago. And so basically, I guess you'd say kudos to the Human Rights Commission. Do you have any questions of our fiscal analyst? If not, I think that we do have someone from the agency. I do not see a name. Do we have someone from the Human Rights Commission? And again, I do not see a name, so if you could identify.
My name is Ruth Glover, and I'm the Executive Director for the Kansas Human Rights Commission. Just as a brief introduction about the Kansas Human Rights Commission, we're the state's anti-discrimination agency. So what we do is we work to prevent discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations. We have a two-part approach to achieving our mission. First of all, we receive complaints of discrimination, we investigate them, and we work to resolve them. Secondly, we do public outreach in the hopes that if we can teach people what discrimination and harassment are, then it won't occur in the future. We are a neutral investigative agency, so that means that we're not on the sides of the individuals who file complaints with us, and we're not on the sides of the responding organizations that receive those complaints. We do have a handout for you. And I think what I'll just do, since I know you're short on time, we'll just skip. We've got highlights from fiscal year 2025 for your review. If you look at page 4 of the report. It's got our fiscal information from previous fiscal years. And if you look at the table, line 2, State General Fund, our request for fiscal year 2027 is actually $562,000 less than what it was in 2008. That's a 31% reduction. Overall, line 6, or total funding, is $366,000 less than what the actual expenditures were in fiscal year 2008, which is about 17% less than the actual expenditures. And then we have 14 fewer FTE requested, which is 41% less than what was actual in fiscal year 2008. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
I appreciate Director Glover, you being here, and again, I appreciate the information, particularly when I look at page 4 and I see the in parenthesis numbers and the minus on the percentage. If every government entity had that, we would all be happier and better shape. So I just want to tell you, as chair of this subcommittee, that I really appreciate the information.
We appreciate those comments.
Committee, do you have any questions of Director Glover? All right, seeing none, again, appreciate you being here.
Thank you
Committee,
very much.
tomorrow, we will meet again at noon, so review the information. Other than the Human Rights Commission, you might look to see where you could save some money or not, but we will make recommendations. Then the full Ways and Means Committee will hear from the chair on Tuesday with the recommendations, which all of you are on Ways and Means, so you'll get a chance to hear it again. Anything good further for the good of the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.